banners, so check.
I will.
Yeah, here. So we need to let those scroll. We don't have to do it like right away, but we need to let them scroll.
How do you do that?
Well, you just show it and he says it'll scroll. I think that's, yeah, it says ticker. So he created it so they'll scroll.
Ah, very awesome. I like that. That's a new look.
Well, that makes up for us not having graphics.
Well, we can change that and we will change that. So
welcome to Thursday night Generational Change live stream.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, all.
You're entering the no spin zone. Oh, who used to say that?
We are somewhat graphically challenged today.
Just for a moment.
Just temporarily graphically challenged. Well, we have a new intern, and there was some miscommunication about what we needed, which is okay. We're content is all that matters, really, right? I mean, presentation is good, but content is key.
Oh, Lord. It's Thursday.
It's Thursday.
And my God, do we have so much to talk about?
Do we? I've been out of the news loop for a few days.
Yeah, you just kind of
I don't like to follow the news. It's depressing.
Well, the news is not what we want it to be. It's unfortunately not. It hasn't been anything presentable because everything is always keeping the working class in limbo. And so now, I guess the most appropriate place to start is the fact that the House has passed the COVID relief bill, but of course they passed it without $15 minimum wage. They've put new restrictions on the $1,400 stimulus checks. They do not have, not only do they not have a public option, they don't even have a reduction in the age of Medicare, which they said they were going to have, and they're expanding COBRA. Yeah, that's great.
Yes, because COBRA is so affordable for people when they lose their job to be able to afford COBRA.
Exceptionally. And of course, we can't say enough about the things that, our government does and the representatives that we have that do not do much. And so what I wanted to address, which I think is very important, is there apparently is a second opportunity at a force the vote option. And what that means is it only is, according to David Sirota, friend of the show, six House Democrats have to withhold their vote when the stimulus package for COVID-19 comes back to them next week to ensure that the $15 minimum wage is in the bill.
$20 says it doesn't happen.
Well, I ain't betting that kind of money. that money's way too
I don't think that we have. Are there 6 Democrats with backbones? Are there 6?
We'll find out. But what I do find interesting is how Joe Manchin always gets what he wants. Always.
Yes, because Joe Manchin's a Republican.
Well, he's the most corporate tool I think you're going to find in either side of the aisle. He just put, I really wish people understood that most of the time this is just a game. This is just kabuki theater, as they say.
Well,
but they know that they're all friends and that they're all playing along, and this is
all serve the same corporate overlords. So it really doesn't matter. None of this surprises. See, this is why I don't bother paying attention. Because I could have said, okay, we'll elect Joe Biden. Nothing will fundamentally change. We're not going to get a $15 minimum wage. We're not going to get a stimulus package. They promised $2,000 checks. I would have sworn up and down it was never going to happen. This is one of those, I figured. So the fact that that's even news is really interesting to me. I would have found it more newsworthy if we did get those things.
Well, that's also why some people think that, they're trying to protect their Kamala Harris investment and that she's going to swoop in and,
because she's a real helper, that one.
Yeah. Well, look, they're thinking of anything at this point that's going to actually spring into action, something for the working class. But remember, the reason we don't get anything is because our government is completely corporate captured at this point. I mean, really corporate captured at this point. And it's essentially only those that are contributing to the cause of electing the representatives that are having any say in anything. Do you really think anyone who is a massive campaign contributor, especially to the Democratic Party,
we didn't
do this one yet.
No, I know. We didn't do that one yet either.
No, I already did this and I did that.
Oh, I thought you only did the second.
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So anyway, there is something to be said for, not getting anything.
We're getting nothing. And we're going to be happy about it.
I don't think we're going to be happy about
No,
it.
that's
I just think more and more people are just starting to recognize how this game is played.
No, I don't think we're really happy about it. What I'm saying is you'll get nothing and you'll be happy about it. It's like we're just fighting for scraps down here on the bottom. Just
I don't know
scraps.
if anybody are just going to be continuing to take no for an answer. That's what's going to be much more interesting, is how much more are people going to just be willing to say, well, I guess this is just the way it is. I don't know. I think that people really are fed up with this. I think they know that this is just a ruse, and that the people who put the chess pieces on the board, Jeff Bezos, Don Sussman,
pick your oligarch,
but Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. I can name them all. It doesn't matter. The point is, to them, this is just a game. This is just risk, and they play it however which way they want to play it. And
because they never lose. They win. They win no matter what happens. Yeah. They win regardless.
So when I hear people complaining about how this person's a racist or that person's doing this,
apparently Dr. Seuss is a bigot. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it.
It's quite unfortunate.
Hey, listen, I don't get you know what? If there were no problems in the world, would that be a hill to die on? Maybe. But that is so far. That's not even on a list.
But
that's something that somebody decided to discover to make an issue. That's what it is.
That's what Democrats do best. Make mountains out of molehills and ignore the mountains that there are.
And again, was there racial insensitivity or even outright racism with what they were alluding to? And I think 2 of the Dr. Seuss's books?
Oh, I just saw one of the pictures, and yes, it's flagrantly racist, and that's unfortunate. But does that diminish all the other things that are Dr. Seuss?
This is a major issue after it being in print for 60 years or something like that. Like I said,
they have nothing else. That they'd have to come up with policy.
If this is, well, again, it's an excuse to talk about a topic that has nothing to do with how we are going to improve regular people's lives. And so that's a good segue into what is a major sticking point with what's going on right now with this COVID relief bill. 17 million people are now ineligible to get the $1,400 stimulus
What's
check.
their means test that they're using?
They are basing it on the level of income for individuals, which I think is capped at $80,000. It's really not that high, believe it or not. And families, I think, is like $120,000 or something like that. The point is, they are basing this also off of your net income from 2019, not 2020, when people were completely decimated. How many people are unfairly going to be targeted by not getting a stimulus check?
Yeah, I mean, well, isn't that kind of the point? The point is to pay out as little as possible. It's sort of like working with a permanent insurance company where all they're doing is sitting there and trying to figure out how not to give you what you're supposed to have.
Well, that's like why we don't have universal health care.
That's why we don't have a lot of nice things. We're not allowed to have nice things here.
And it would seem to me that if you're going to do a stimulus check and people are going to get taxed based on their level of income anyway, it doesn't really matter if you give them a stimulus check because they're going to pay for it anyway if they're above the threshold.
There's just so many other ways they could have handled this. I mean, the truth is $2,000 checks were supposed to just go out to everybody. And then later on in life, towards the end, if you want to tax that back from the wealthy people at the end of the year, have at it. Like, that's the way you handle it.
I just can't
believe. Give everybody the money. And then at the end of the year, yeah, you can have the people that did really well pay it back.
But I still don't understand how you could be in office now for almost 2 months and you're still doing this.
How can you be in office for almost 2 months and not have had a single press conference?
That's gonna, and you see, this is the thing that they're gonna come after him on really hard because everyone knows that Biden's in cognitive decline. That's not a question. But if it's severe to the extent that he literally can't handle himself in a press conference,
well, we know he really can't unless he's highly medicated.
But 2 things are going to come from this. Number one, they're going to really start chirping on Kamala probably faster than people even thought was possible.
Did anyone ever think we'd have a president that never got a single vote?
Well, there is precedent for that.
Well, yes, there have been times when vice presidents take over and they were never elected. Yeah,
but are you saying that there was this foreknowledge about a person who was elected to be the president of the United States, the vice president was in waiting, and they knew that the president that they were electing was already
Yes.
had several hindrances to whether or not they could actually complete a term.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is that Kamala was anointed about 4 years ago by the Clintons, and that was just their plan all along. And they were sticking her in come hell or high water, and this was the way to get her in. That's what I'm saying.
I think that Tulsi's kneecapping of her at the debate really changed things. It really did.
And yet it didn't change. And yet they still are shoving her down our throats. It's like, we cannot get rid of
what
this.
I do think was possible is that they really didn't see it coming. And Kamala was so ill prepared. I mean, she didn't even know what to say.
Which, by the way, I find really kind of pathetic for a prosecutor. I mean, prosecutors, the whole point of that, like if you're a prosecutor and the biggest prosecutor in the state of California, and you can't manage, a debate and stand on your own 2 feet and just from the hip, you obviously are not a very good prosecutor.
Well, it's not just that. You also have to remember that there are a lot of people, and I don't know how long this has been going on, but it's been going on for quite some time now. It's like when you look at Brett Kavanaugh, that person does not deserve to be on the Supreme Court.
I have to do this. I can't.
And that's that's an aside to the allegations by Christine Blasey Ford. He has no business being there.
No, well, neither does what's her name, Amy Coney Island.
Coney Barrett. I haven't
Coney Island.
No, but you see, the difference is that there were a lot of people who actually thought that Kavanaugh was capable of being there.
I don't know why.
By the time you got to Amy Coney Barrett, everyone was like, "No, this is Handmaid's Tale."
Well, but the truth is, he's never tried a case either. He's never tried a case. I just have this crazy idea that Supreme Court justices should have some trial experience. I just do. And I know it's not like a written requirement. I know that's not in the Constitution, but we've had much higher qualifications and people in there throughout history than we do now. Like, this is pathetic.
And that is 1,000% correct. By the way, Mr. I can't say your name, Slayer. I appreciate your setting love from Canada.
We can say cuck. Why can't we say cuck?
Well,
we could say cook.
Cook. Okay. Well, whatever. Appreciate you from Canada. We wish you had your healthcare.
My best friend's a Canucky from Winnipeg.
Well, that's much appreciated. But we're thrilled that you guys are with us tonight. For those of you who are here for the first time,
Amy Coney Island. That's
Amy Coney Island.
I can't help.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, there you go.
Well, okay. I mean, the level of jurisprudence has reached such an embarrassing low. Like, I try to envision what it would be like being in law school right now and trying to wrap my head around that this is what we're resigned to.
Yeah.
And thinking about like 20, 30 years down the road, what are the decisions going to look like that people are going to study? Like, we studied things like, Marbury versus Madison, Brown versus Board of Education, all these big cases that were written. Well, that's actually a very poorly written decision. That's it. We could sidebar on that. But I mean, like, these brilliantly written decisions by very smart jurists. And now, can you imagine, like, I thought honestly that Clarence Thomas would be the low bar. Like, I really did. I figured that's low as we're going to go in terms of level of intellect and again, yet we go even lower.
Another person who should not have been on the Supreme Court, considering his behavior. No. We're supposed to have a high standard. And it's not because you were born on third base or because you went to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. That's not what this is about. When you think about integrity, which to me is my favorite word of Dr. Cornel West, it's true. Integrity is what separates you from the rest. Bernie Sanders, his greatest asset, his greatest attribute is his integrity. He may not fight the way we want him to, but you can never question his integrity because he actually does stand for what he believes in and he believes what he stands for. That's, again, in politics, I don't know why you have to do that to me while I'm trying to.
I'm sorry.
Jen's very immature.
Very immature.
She hasn't grown up.
Not much.
She's like Wendy from Peter Pan, and I'm Peter. Yeah.
That's kind of nice, actually.
Wendy, Maura, Angela, darling.
Yeah. So you know what? Because this stuff is such nonsense that it's hard to take it seriously. I feel like when you look at what's going on in the world, we're bombing Syria, which nobody really is caring too much about that. We just killed some poor brown people in the Middle East for a change, whatever. And there's all these things going on. We have people starving, people homeless, and I can only take some of these other things so seriously. That's why. I just can't. And then there's the fact that sometimes I look around waiting for like there to be a camera, like not that camera, but like a candid camera, like I'm in some sort of bizarro universe when you wouldn't think. I saw an article the other day that there is a 7-year-old girl that's holding lemonade stands to fund her brain surgeries because she can't afford to have her brain surgery. See, if that is not a failed system, I don't know what is. I mean, I just can't even. And so when you hear things like that, it's very hard for me to get all wrapped up in the politically correct nonsense.
Guys, if you're watching for the first time, make sure you subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you hit the like button.
Yeah, of course Steve Mnuchin endorses Kamala Harris. She should have prosecuted him.
Can I do a roll call, please? So anyway, this is generational change. Please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure that you share. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube and get this out. We've got 30 people watching right now. We've got 9 likes. We need more. Got to get as many people tuning in. Obviously, we're going to really push once Diane comes into the studio. So we're just warming up. But for those of you who do know, what we do is known as News and Amuse. So we talk about certain topics, certain important topics of the day. And so we've, been hitting... No. That. There.
See, he doesn't want me reaching across. He doesn't want me reaching across him. He can't handle.
That Bernie photo is so weak.
Oh, and that Greg Abbott has been a douche since forever.
Well, that's true. He has been. So now.
I didn't even vote for him for Attorney General when he was running for that because he's such a POS.
Hard to believe. But then again, what have we not seen from Texas that would surprise you? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. We got a situation going.
So here's what we want to run through with our News and Amuse before Diane gets in the studio.
We can at least start it. We don't always finish it.
Number one, Bernie says he's going to force the vote on the $15 minimum wage. That's great. It gives vindication to what we had initially talked about was forcing the vote on Medicare for all, which we supported. Unfortunately, it was not dealt with in the most appropriate way.
And we don't know that it would have... It never had a chance of working anyway, and we know that.
But you have to get people on the record. You have to force the envelope. There is this idea that you can't get stuff done. Oh, yes, you can. You just have to know how to use your leverage, and you have to have a set of cojones.
Well, that is the problem.
And they don't. So a lot of people do not. But Bernie is willing to take that fight, and that's great. It is necessary. So now how do we ensure that the $15 minimum wage gets in the COVID relief bill? Well, six Democrats have to withhold their vote to ensure that the COVID relief bill includes the $15 minimum wage. Not asking much. And there's definitely more than 6 non-corporate, not even progressive, just 6 non-corporate representatives that are in Congress.
Oh, doesn't mean they're going to do what we want them to do.
But let me count the ways. Ro Khanna, Katie Porter, Barbara Lee,
Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman.
Can I do this?
Why do I even need to be here?
Marie Newman, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib,
Pramila Jayapal,
Raul Guevara,
nobody in Florida,
Ayanna Pressley. Nobody in Florida.
No,
this is Florida. Forget that. You're not going to find anybody here.
Nope.
I guess that's it. But you know what? I've definitely named. Oh, wait. Well, do we want to name Mark Pocan? No, he says he's not doing anything. Maybe even Richard Blumenthal in Portland.
Now
Oregon.
You're just pulling names out of your butt.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of them out there. Where is the courage of your conviction? If you actually believe in this, hey, it could be done.
So what is this? Like, what are we talking about here? Again, I feel like this is like the 3rd week in a row I've looked at the COVID shot vaccine in a picture.
The point of this is to talk about the fact that we do have a governor who is still playing this game of, I don't want to say cat and mouse because that's really not the way I would describe it. The one thing though that I will say that he has done to his credit is DeSantis has finally taken the advice of Joe Biden, or the Biden administration, I should say, let's be fair. They are prioritizing teachers for the vaccine, which is good because teachers are essential workers and they should be prioritized. Perhaps we will get the teachers union president Anna Fusco at some point to discuss this.
That would be nice.
We definitely know that these things are very important, and making sure that, you know, we are doing everything we can in our capacity to take care of the ones who need it most. Yes, education is essential, and the teachers do not want to go back in the classroom if it is too dangerous, and I don't blame them. So let's prioritize teachers and get them their vaccine. And that's what we're doing.
And obviously we know Texas. What can you say about Texas? I actually really loved my time in Texas, but apparently now there's no mask mandate at all. Apparently it's just a free for all in Texas. They figured like an ice age type of freeze and lack of water would be a nice segue into just a full on coronavirus, you know, resurgence. Was that like what Greg Abbott was hoping for?
I think Greg is trying to distract from the fact that he's failed so miserably as the governor when it comes to the response of the polar vortex. And now all of a sudden he wants to pull the mask mandate. And thankfully, a lot of businesses in Texas are rejecting that. They're not even listening to him.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, people are still going to wear masks if they want to wear masks. I mean, you know, that people are still going to do what they think is the best thing to do. I kind of, again, I'm a very let the chips fall where they may kind of person. So it's unfortunate. But
the only problem is the pandemic is still surging and people are being reckless about it. And Texas is setting precedent for other states. So apparently Mississippi is joining the chorus and going along and saying, oh, we're not going to wear masks. It's like, what? Why? What
I'm still seeing posts from the people that call it the scamdemic and that the masks have never been proven to be effective, which I just know from personal experience is not true, because if nothing else, it's been keeping everything else down. Ironically, that we've been sick this past week. But I mean, of course, masks work. They keep the germs inside. Like, I don't, it's, to me, that's not really questionable.
Hey, Declan, if you think we don't have enough people watching the stream right now, you could help us by spreading the word. We do the best we can. Sorry, we're not on that level yet, but hey, you never know what might happen. Give us 4 years and maybe, or 5 years.
See, how come you get to talk to the trolls?
Oh, I'm just saying they're trying to make a point that we don't have a very big audience.
No, we're working on it. And quite honestly, with YouTube the way it is, it's been like deplatforming people and taking away subscribers and hiding things, and the algorithm is messed up. It's not like you just do this and everybody just comes on and watches. Not to mention there's a lot of other things happening simultaneously.
That is true.
But clearly you like it because you're always here slumming with us.
Hey, we appreciate you, brother. We appreciate you. And so I do want to answer this question from Sawyer Coven. How much of DeSantis' move was political calculus and how much was sound policy? His approval rate rose 20 points in the past week despite his terrible record thus far. I will tell you that the reason why DeSantis does what he does and gets away with what he gets away with is because Florida does not have a legitimate opposition party. If it did, then he wouldn't be able to get away with it. That's why he is as reckless as he is, and basically just doing whatever he thinks is going to provide him with the most leverage within his own party, because DeSantis is going to run for president if he gets reelected governor. That's a fact. So just be ready. We'll see if there is a real challenge that could be mounted. Like I said, I still think it comes down to Nikki Fried and Anna Eskamani. I know there are other people like Charlie Crist, somehow, some way is planning on getting in the race.
Oh, for God's sake. That man needs to just be given the hook.
I think you're convinced that, some things are done deliberately for whatever reason. And, whether or not there is...
Jimmy.
Yeah. Whether or not there's any intention to get things to a certain place, I can't say. But what I do know is that people are not buying the BS anymore. They're really starting to pick up on these things. They're starting to recognize that our system is not working for them, and they are tired of listening to the same old tired excuses. And so today, we're going to bring in somebody who is going to talk about what I think is one of the hallmark areas of this country right now that is seeing a real renaissance in terms of the way they do politics. And that, of course, is Dianne Morales, who is running to be the next mayor of New York City. But there is a lot to dive into there because a lot of people just think of AOC unseating Joe Crowley. Well, what that did was it set a lot of things in motion that you're now seeing come to light. So with that said, Diane?
All right. Well, we don't have to share now because we have the real person here.
Yes,
so
we do.
Hi.
Good
Hey,
evening.
how are you guys? Good. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. It's good to see you both.
Good to see you. So we've never met, so I'm really glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is one of those things where it's no other town, no other city in the country do people really know who the mayor is, right? Like nobody, that's so not other than Buttigieg, but like really for the most part, no one knows mayors of places except New York. Yeah. And I think that that's really an important position. I think that everybody sort of has their eyes on it. I think it speaks a lot to what's going on in the country. And obviously New York is extremely indicative of the diversity in this country. So why don't you introduce yourself, say a little bit about like what you've been doing, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So first of all, I think, to your point about not everybody knows who the mayors are of other cities. I continuously am struck by actually the interest and engagement of people outside of New York City with this race. Though I get it, but it's still striking. So I'm Dianne Morales. I am a first generation Black Boricua, born and raised in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm also the proud single mother of 2 young adult college students. So I have my lived experiences. I think growing up in New York City and raising my children in New York City has kind of gave me a front row seat to a lot of the challenges and obstacles that I think, a lot of New Yorkers that are like me face and encounter in trying to make it and trying to, provide for their families. At the same time, I have served for the last 30 plus years as the CEO of various organizations that actually focus on anti-poverty work or really trying to help others in similar situations access educational and economic opportunity. And so I have this sort of what I think is a unique intersection of experiences, both from my personal life and my professional life, and this perspective on some of the things that people have to deal with and navigate, and also in some of the things that are necessary in order to help people overcome those challenges. And so, a year ago, I thought that combination would be a powerful thing in terms of helping New York City. And I think now, in light of everything that's happened since then, it makes it all the more sort of imperative that we have someone that brings this kind of experience to the table.
We're speaking with Dianne Morales, who is running to be the next mayor of New York City. If you could talk about where you're from. I know Bed-Stuy. I'm actually, I was born in Mill Basin, and I am a Jersey guy through and through, even though I am a Brooklyn Net fan, so I'm proud to throw that out there. If you could share with us, what your New York experience has been like. Obviously, there's 5 boroughs, but Brooklyn, I like to say, is the heart of New York City. No offense to the other boroughs. So let's start there. Let's start with Bed-Stuy and Brooklyn, and then we'll expand from there.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Bed-Stuy. This is home for me. Didn't really start to experience the other boroughs until I went to high school. I went to high school in Manhattan, and so that was when I started to explore my independence back in the late 70s, early 80s. And kind of, explore the world, what felt like the world outside of the borough. But I've always lived in Brooklyn, except for actually I did a short stint after college in Flushing, Queens, in a basement apartment with no windows. Wouldn't want
Where'd you go to school?
So I went to Stuyvesant High School, which is one of the sort of test prep specialized high schools that are at the center of so much controversy right now. And then I went out to Dartmouth College freshman year. Terrible place for someone like me.
Little conservative for you?
It was a little conservative. It was a little racist and a lot classist. And this was the 80s. So, we'll give them a little grace. I don't think it's changed
that much. I'm not feeling it. But
well, we remember those 80s very fondly.
All right, I'm 82, so I hear you. And I actually had a friend who went to Dartmouth, but I digress.
Yeah, I mean, some people went there and had great experiences. I think, coming from the hood and being first generation, it was probably not the best place for me. So, then I graduated from Stony Brook University on Long Island, and then went on later on to get graduate degrees from Columbia and from Harvard.
Wow. See, now that's fancy. It's very fancy. So
I think I was overcompensating for the Dartmouth debacle, to be honest.
Well, no, and you know what? The truth is, if you have the opportunity to have a name like those names, it does matter. It does matter, and it does make a difference, and it does open doors that wouldn't otherwise be open to somebody. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but that's the case.
Right. I think that's right. I think that's right. I think it's there definitely have been doors that have probably my resume has probably sort of floated to the top as a result of it. But I think it's different even for coming from those schools, whether or not you have sort of the networks or know how to do the networks when you're there, which is not something that I was skilled in. I understand now in retrospect better than I did at the time.
Right. You weren't in the like sailing club in the Hamptons crowd.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Just a little bit. Yeah. No.
So obviously New York is a bundle of the same issues that we have. It's like a microcosm of everything that's going on in the country. You obviously were hit hardest in the beginning with COVID. You're everything from your governor's scandal to everything gets major news coverage. But what are your key issues that you would really want to address that are really within the capacity of the mayor's office? I mean, we could talk about all sorts of policy, but what is realistic that you would want to achieve to do as mayor?
Sure. I mean, so, I think that question's a little tough right now, given sort of the current times that we're living in, right? The fact that we still haven't gotten the pandemic under control, the fact that it is impacting certain communities so much more disproportionately than others, the fact that we're not rolling out the vaccine in an equitable way, so there's that sort of reality. And I think for me, saving the lives of Black and brown people who are working to keep the city running would be first priority. And that involves both, paying people to stay home where possible, ensuring the people that have to go to work, that they have the protections that they need, both in terms of PPE and access to the vaccine. But, I think if it were normal time, which normal, one of the things I've said throughout this campaign is that normal wasn't working for most of us anyway.
No.
I think that the priority for me would be around, and what I think about as the thing that I expect to tackle sort of first is the reimagining and reclaiming of the definition of public safety. Public safety and policing are not the same thing, and they have been equated for far too long in communities. And I think we've, it's happened as we've divested from communities and divested from the things that actually really contribute to community safety. And I think we need to move towards actually reclaiming that and reinvesting in our communities. So I think that's one of the things that would be a real priority for me.
Yeah, it's we all remember, well, not all of us, but those of us that have been paying attention, how Mayor Bloomberg was and what happened with stop and frisk and what that has done to generations of people of color. And I know how devastating that is. I'm somebody with a background in criminal justice and criminal law. So to me, that's a very pet issue for me. And the concept, the injustice there. But have you noticed any real significant changes since de Blasio has been in there, since we've had those issues? Or has it really just been the same?
I mean, I think there have been some differences. He was successful in sort of stemming the flow of the stop and frisk and the broken windows policing on some level. But, I think that any progress that he might have made was really significantly lost over the course of the last year when we watched as the police, NYPD, brutalized peaceful protesters and violated people's civil rights. I think, it's really hard to give him credit for anything that he might have done on the front end. Did I lose you? Okay.
No,
you froze for a second, but you're okay.
Yeah. Got it. It's hard to give him credit for anything that might have happened on the front end, because the last year there's been to say rollback is such an understatement in terms of the things that we've seen happen. And, I watched as my kids got pepper sprayed and then my son got assaulted at the very first George Floyd protests last year. So it's hard for me to give him any credit for anything positive.
He just seems fairly hapless to me, like he's just never seemed very effective. He just seems sort of just there to me.
Yeah, it feels kind of like he's over it, quite frankly. I think New Yorkers started to get that sense when he, launched his candidacy for president. And then I think he never, it doesn't feel like he ever really came back home, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, it's not surprising.
We're speaking with Dianne Morales, who's running to be the next mayor of New York City. What you would, I guess, there's probably a handful of different issues that you could really touch upon, but what distinguishes you from the other, I think, 7 candidates in the race? This big
it's a
race.
lot.
Got a lot of people in here.
Go ahead.
No, I'm excited because I know you're probably the only progressive.
Well,
there are over 30 candidates in this race.
30 candidates.
Wow.
There's over 30 candidates, y'all. Just so you know,
Vermin Supreme, one of them.
Vermin.
Well, somebody say.
Okay, but now obviously some of those people are infinitely more viable than other people.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from anybody. I mean, obviously, there's only 6 or 7 serious contenders.
Right. I mean, who the people are that are seriously into this and that can get the backing.
I'm running for mayor of New York City.
So amongst the people that are really contenders, what is really the distinction, between you and them?
Yeah. So I just want to sort of start off with a footnote to that. And my footnote to that is actually that there are many people in what I call the political chattering class in New York City who for a long time have dismissed or erased my candidacy and who even to this day question my quote unquote viability. And so my pushback on that is that the voters are the ones that should get to determine what viability is and not some predetermined criteria that were literally set or established for, white men in the 1800s. So I just I need to start with that point. And insofar as what distinguishes me, I think I alluded to it a little bit in my opening comments about, I think my life is much more reflective of the lived experiences of average New Yorkers. Again, growing up in a sort of low income working class family, being a woman of color, being a head of household, being a single mother, working to sort of, make ends meet and provide for my family. I think that's much more reflective of the average New Yorker than any of the other candidates in this race. But then, combined with the fact that I've actually spent my entire career as the CEO of organizations that worked to directly impact and improve people's quality of life and help them access, a path to living in dignity and having economic opportunity and achieving, educational opportunity. And so those things are unmatched, I think, in this race. I've got the executive experience, I've got the management experience, I've got the sort of budget experience, but we've never actually had someone who reflects and could uplift the experiences of New Yorkers and who actually has dedicated their life to improving that in a sort of direct daily basis career. And so I think those are the things that distinguish me dramatically. And the last thing I'll say on that is that, I am not accountable to any sort of special interest or corporate PACs or, endowed, financially endowed folks. I am solely accountable to the everyday New Yorkers who my life has reflected. And I think that separates me as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're the show that wouldn't even have you here if you took corporate money. So by definition, being on here means that you are a non-corporate candidate, and that you are somebody who is only answering to constituents. Sorry, we have a question.
Okay.
Being that you're a former teacher, the gentleman, Colby Zentner, would like to know, does Dianne support ending mayoral control of New York City schools? It's an interesting question. Yep.
I think that's a really good question. And I don't think there's a cut and dry answer to that. I've been having a lot of conversations with the advocate groups, the parent groups on the ground about this. And I love the idea of ending mayoral control. I think that one of the things that we need to work on, and I've talked about co-creating this with those groups, is what does that mean and what does that look like? Because I also remember the days before mayoral control. And I don't think our public schools were doing much better than either. So I think there's something about this sort of diametrically opposed paradigm, and we need to kind of figure out what the nuance is. I 100% think that communities should have a lot more control, and the stakeholders should have a lot more control, and the mayor should be held accountable. What that looks like from a structural perspective, I think, remains to be seen, but I'm 100% open to having that conversation.
Yeah, that's funny, because that's like an answer I would always give. It's like, yeah, I'm completely open to that. Let's have that discussion, but it's not so clear cut what that answer is and what that would look like. I'm not sure how that differs really from how we do things here in terms of the school. I mean, we don't have an elected mayor, actually. Here. So it's kind of,
we really don't want to compare Broward politics.
No.
They're not exactly,
there's no elected mayor here. The mayor is it rotates amongst county commissioners.
And our elected officials, unfortunately, much like Wasserman Schultz, have been in office for a very long time.
Yeah. So every 2, I think it's every 2 years.
Yeah, every 2 years
another commissioner becomes the county commission, sits as the mayor.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
No, we don't have direct election of mayor. And that's something that's actually been up for discussion here. A lot of people obviously do support having an independently elected mayor.
Well, it's funny, Broward is very much like big city politics in the sense that it's very entrenched. You got a lot of power brokers. You have a lot of people that have been in this for a very long time.
But also it's a county.
It is. But so is Kings County, New York. So is Queens County, New York.
Yes, but they don't have mayors.
No, you have a mayor that oversees the entire city.
Borough presidents.
That's
borough
presidents. There you go. That's a great point. And in a way, that would probably that would qualify in a similar capacity.
Yeah.
What I do want to ask you, and obviously a lot has changed in New York in the last, it's almost 3 years now. But if you can talk about, there's obviously a lot of people who may not necessarily see the change that AOC brought to the political arena, but I would be curious to know what your thoughts are in terms of how things have changed since the King of Queens, Joe Crowley, has been excommunicated from politics. And now it seems to me like a lot of things are changing. It's not just AOC, it's Jamal Bowman, it's Mondaire Jones. You've got a number of people running for, different city council positions.
Yeah, we had Lindsey Bolin on here.
Isaiah James. So I think things are really changing, and I'd like to hear your perspective.
We're just jealous.
Change shall come. I think AOC really was like, a trailblazer, obviously. I think she shifted like the Overton window of what we've allowed ourselves to imagine as being possible in terms of transforming the status quo, in terms of defying expectations around what viability looks like or what that means. And really kind of, in my mind, brought to light the idea that women of color could come from the working class and still be badasses and still be brilliant. And be change makers, and that there's something about, the whole idea of there's that expression, follow Black women, follow women of color, follow Black women, and the idea of kind of breaking away from everything that is traditional, and really just being true to your own values and the community that you seek to represent without any kind of compromise. And I think that that to me was a striking sort of beacon of hope in the middle of this, this previous administration in particular. And so it was a game changer, and I think opened the door for so many other things that we've seen happen, not just in New York, but across the country.
One of the reasons I think that the change is so significant right now, and also a big fan of Ron Kim, is the fact that no one in their right mind would have thought to challenge Cuomo, 3 years ago. But now, the Don of New York politics is, he may be very close to getting his comeuppance, and, whatever capacity it ends up coming in, he's got a lot of skeletons. So the fact that, you want to focus on, obviously, his sexual harassment. Absolutely. I think what he has done with the nursing homes is,
that's actionable. That's actionable.
Yeah, no, that's crimes against humanity. I mean, that's like, it's not even a gray area anymore. But I do think, because of the way the dynamic has changed, I do think that people are becoming a lot more courageous in their ability to do this. can you speak to that and your position as far as, where you stand on Governor Cuomo as of right now? Because obviously they joke there's New York City and then there's the rest of New York, but I can imagine that the rivalry is pretty fierce right now.
Sure. I mean, so before these scandals came to light, I had already been talking about the need for New York City to take on the bully in Albany, and to really sort of have leadership that would stand up to Albany and really take on and advocate for what we deserve, because we've been, kind of shortchanged, to say the least, for a while now. And then the nursing home scandal blew up, and I was the first, and I'm the only mayoral candidate actually that called for his impeachment. I think that, the violation of public trust, the straight up just deception and obfuscation that he engaged in, the lives that were lost, the damage that was done, while at the same time he published a book about his leadership and sort of patted himself on the back about that. It's disgraceful. And I can only think about the pain that so many families continue to suffer and the loss that they suffered at the hands of this kind of decision making and leadership, using the word in the loosest way possible. And I think we deserve better. I think we've seen enough. We've had enough. There have been years and years of sort of, undercurrents and accusations, and now, we have it. It's clear and it's blatant.
To me though, and this is something I always say, and I will say it forever, I do not know a single adult woman that has not been violated in her life. I don't. And granted, it's a huge spectrum ranging from offensive, jokes to forcible rape to, whatever. I mean, it's a spectrum, but I don't know a woman that hasn't been violated. And so to me, that makes it incredibly credible. I think that, and another thing is, for people who don't believe it, then clearly you don't know any women, because I'm serious. I don't know a woman I've been violated, not in any capacity like where I felt like threatened really, but still. And so it's extremely believable. But if we start getting rid of men in power positions that have violated women, there's not going to be anybody left but women. So, I said power positions.
Oh, okay. Well,
men in power positions, but also
this is
something.
A powerful podcast.
Well, also something that could easily be remedied by having more women in power positions.
Yeah.
And this goes to what you said before about having women of color come in and sort of take care of business. I cannot agree more. And this is something that I have learned. If you need something to get done, first, give it to a woman, give it to a mom, give it to a busy woman. And then if you give it to a Black woman on top of that, that's getting done. Things are getting done. And it's because when you have people that have had to be doing on their own and kicking butt and handling business their whole lives, that's all they know how to do. So that's how you get things done. I cannot agree more.
I know it's not much of a sample, but I pay very close attention to who is defending Cuomo and who isn't. And I can assure you that there are not many women of color defending Cuomo.
That's shocking.
No, not really.
Yeah.
But it is actually it's a very good segue, because if you looked back in, I think it was August, and we don't have to dwell on Biden. We know he's got a lot of issues, especially from a cognitive standpoint. They were talking about the prospect of him potentially being replaced post convention, and Cuomo came up, and I'm thinking about, and I say it constantly, I don't think people really understand the power of corporate media and what it does and how it can drive a narrative and turn somebody like Cuomo into a
hero,
presidential candidate.
They made him look like him and his little brother Fredo looked like, they were some sort of dream team. And I just think they're thugs.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the problem. There's a lot of people in New York City and other places that eat that type of stuff up. Just because Diane doesn't and you don't, doesn't mean there's not a lot of people that aren't influenced by that type of stuff.
Case in point, look at all the people that voted for Trump. There's a lot of people that eat up a false narrative of whatever that sense of masculinity is, or that I'm going to get stuff done sort of image. And that's, to me, it's a bully.
I guess it depends on from what perspective you're looking at it from. What I'm saying is you have this constant, again, it's like the Trump empty podium situation. It's no different than constantly putting, Cuomo on the air all the time and saying, well, look how great he looks and look how well he's conducting himself. And the truth is, no one's ever looking under the hood of the car to see what's actually there. No one's looking at the fact that the chirping was already there, that he was doing very nefarious things. So I'm curious, as it translates into your race, what has the media coverage been like in New York? Obviously, we're very friendly with Andrew. He does an amazing job of getting that attention. But I would like to think that for somebody who doesn't have a national profile, because he does, for the people that are in New York City that don't, but are getting, let's just say, the type of attention from the media because they're either, whoever they may be rubbing elbows with that are allowing them to get this attention. Can you speak to that and how that's affecting the mayoral race?
So let me just, on the Cuomo thing, I think there's a couple of things I want to say about that first. I think that, there was, the New York City media has always been critical of Cuomo. That being said, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, right, in August, there was this, the height of the pandemic. There was no direction. There was no leadership. There was just on the national level, right? And then, here comes Cuomo, right, to sort of provide a steady voice and calm. And so I think there was a lot about sort of that moment in time and the vacuum that existed otherwise that he stepped right into and that served him well in that moment. And I think even in New York, even the media in New York, there was sort of this kind of like suspect, kind of like, it's nice to get that because we're all sort of feeling like we just need some sort of leadership. And also like, we're not sure we're buying it 100%, right? So there's that. And, I think in New York City right now, in terms of the mayoral race, this goes back to sort of what I said earlier about, my own candidacy being sort of erased and that kind of thing in the midst of this campaign. I don't fit the criteria. I don't fit the expectations. I don't fit the traditions. And there are plenty of people that do, right? And so, whether it's flashy or it's, having a national platform, there's a lot of attention kind of going in those areas that sort of rubs off, if you will, on folks' campaign. And I don't, I feel like I missed part of your question because you all froze for a hot second.
I think he was just asking in general about you're talking about being, ghosted, essentially, is what you're talking about. And we know from personal experience that non-corporate candidates don't get the media attention and generally don't have the money to pay for it.
I think that there's just being this great awakening that's happening in this country right now. And I know a lot of people are very impatient about this, but I look at this scenario and I know if Nina hears this, she's going to hate me. But, if Nina's going to run for president in let's just we're just looking at a scenario where we're let's say 4 even 8 years down the road, Nina Turner is running for president, and you take all the things that you've learned over the past several years in terms of how the game is played, what they will do to push certain people forward. Think of how much more prepared people are going to be for the tactics that will be put in place. And the truth is, it's really just a race against time because the establishment, as much as people think the establishment is genius, whatever, they're really not. It's they've got money and power, and it's really just a matter of congregating the masses to let them understand that, hey, Dianne Morales is running for mayor of New York City. She is a former teacher. She is a nonprofit champion of the LGBTQ community and the homeless community. People need to know these things because housing is a effing nightmare in New York City. So
housing is huge. We could definitely talk about that for a second. Sorry.
And the idea that is not what I would think and again, and we don't have to talk about any other candidates in the race, but universal basic income for New York City would be
Mhm.
incredible. And it would obviously aid in what I would love for you to talk about is housing for all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, were you going to jump in for a second?
I was going to say, I know, no, you guys have obviously massive housing problem. Look,
Yeah.
everywhere does. Everywhere does. We just recently had a guest on who was talking about how in Miami, the police and the garbage trucks just went and scooped up and threw away the entire encampments of the homeless people. And so, you can't, it's like you can't kick down enough, you know, and it's so disgusting. But obviously, New York, the prices to live there are exponentially higher than even here. So what is and yet I'm sure you also have tons of empty housing units, which is
we do. Yes, we do. We do.
So how to reconcile that? And that's exactly the kind of thing that it sounds like you've been working on in your life, you know, is housing.
Yes. And so, you know, I there's a couple things I want to say about this, right? One is that you're right. You know, the housing issue, the housing insecurity in New York City is terrible. The rents are too damn high. You know, the pandemic has pushed people further further to the edge and into further insecurity, and the homeless population has grown incredibly. That being said, if we had the political and the moral courage and will, we could house every homeless person right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what's lacking for too long. And this is kind of at the core of my campaign and my candidacy, the idea of, you know, the things that we actually can choose to change, the idea that, you know, these systems are not intractable, and that with the right political organizing, mobilizing, and strategizing, we could actually create new models, right? So for too long, the housing market, the real estate market has been driven by speculative for-profit development interests. And we give away, you know, billions of dollars in tax subsidies and tax incentives to these, you know, developers in exchange for a fraction of what is quote unquote affordable housing that really is not affordable to anyone who really needs it. And so the idea would be, you know, to first and foremost, take over every vacant space, whether it's commercial spaces, office spaces, hotel rooms, and convert those spaces into permanent housing. So we got to move away from this shelter system. I operated shelters for 10 years in the South Bronx. They are not intended to actually solve the housing crisis. The way they operate, the way they're structured, it is just like a revolving door. And you know, you put people into permanent housing without giving them the tools that they need to maintain that housing. So moving away from a shelter system, and instead of investing $3 billion a year in those shelters, investing those dollars in creating permanent housing, using all those spaces that I talked about, so that we are actually creating and maintaining stable housing for people. And then also, you know, I could go on and on about this. Moving away from that for-profit speculative structure and investing those dollars in community-driven, community-focused housing initiatives that focus on, you know, that create more social housing, cooperative housing, community land trusts, and really empower and give the communities the ability to self-determine and expand housing opportunities for everybody. I think that's at the core of what I think we need to do differently.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that there's countries where regular people live in communal and subsidized housing, and it isn't just for poor people.
That's right.
There are countries where only very wealthy people don't live in planned housing. Yeah. And I think it's, you know, we have issues here a lot with developers coming in, obviously greasing wheels, paying off commissioners, and building whatever monstrosities they want to build. And yes, they're supposed to then allocate resources to schools, libraries, hospitals, you know, all of those things, but somehow they don't. They don't. So I would imagine that's the same in terms of what their obligation is in terms of providing affordable housing. Like technically they're supposed to, but it doesn't really work. They're not being enforced.
Yeah. Or whatever. If they do something, it's like throwing a bone, right? It's really not a substantive trade-off, right? They are most definitely getting the better end of the deal, and the community is not. And in New York City, you know, how AMI, area median income, is calculated is a citywide calculus, right? And so I talk about skewing things and throwing things off. It does nothing to address the sort of, working class and the deeply poor folks in terms of their needs for housing. So there's a lot of things that are wrong about the way the housing market operates in New York City. And we need leadership that's willing to take it on.
Yeah.
Now let's have some fun.
We're going to have fun?
Now, New York, obviously, it's the Mecca. It has it all. So we know that people have been joking around about the bodegas. I happen to be a foodie.
It's all about food.
Well, food's a big deal.
Food's good in New York.
It is.
I know.
Well, for anybody who wants the best street food, my opinion, of course, the Halal Gyro stand on 53rd and 6th in Manhattan, directly across from the Hilton.
That more or less, kind of, sort of.
That's the one. That is the one. I can remember when my friend introduced me to it a long time ago. And if you're in the city and the weather is somewhat bearable, the line will get 2 hours deep on a Friday or Saturday night. That's how long people will wait for this stuff. Now, of course, I have given up.
You don't eat meat.
I don't eat meat, but the falafel is amazing.
Oh my God!
And if I ever was going to make an exception for lamb, this is it.
Oh my God!
Did your mouth just water there as you were saying that?
Hey, I'm coming. I'm coming
back
in a week. I'm actually going to be visiting in a week. If I could get into the city, I definitely, I know you guys will be out there.
No, and interestingly, the last time I was up there was I stayed in Brooklyn because you guys hosted the Frida exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like a groupie, Frida. I'm a Frida groupie.
Me too.
Are you? Did you see it? Did you go?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay, I had to fly there to go.
Yeah, I took time off from work, which was a big deal for me at the time. But yeah,
it was amazing. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So it was very special. I mean, I don't get on a plane for any exhibit. But no, I think that you're great. I'd be very happy to vote for you. We have all sorts of great people that come on and live in places where I can't vote for them.
Well, that's a beautiful thing because we do love Andrew Yang, but that's the great thing about New York City is that you do have ranked choice voting.
Absolutely, ranked choice.
So if you can talk about that, because I still forget.
He has a theory.
I have a.
He has a strategy.
I still think that you and Andrew need to form an alliance, but that's fine. Because we all know that the corporate candidates are going to do what they're going to do. And we all know how they maneuver. And I do think that the two true outsiders in the race would, the coalitions need to build, because when it's all said and done, if people agree on a living wage, if they agree on universal basic income, if they agree on universal health care, if they agree on protecting the environment, people try to find reasons not to get along. We need to find reasons to get along. Yeah, we're not going to agree on everything, but we definitely need to be building those bridges. So back to what I had initially asked, what are some of your favorite places to visit in New York City, especially small businesses? Because as we like to do down here, promote local small businesses.
Yeah, we do small business Saturdays.
Yeah, awesome. So there's a little place, a little Italian place in Fort Greene, Brooklyn called Dino's. It is.
Give them props.
Yeah, it's really close to the high school that my son went to that I love. There's a little place on Tompkins Avenue in Bed-Stuy called Brown Butter. It's a Black-owned spot. Best egg and bacon, egg, and cheese on a homemade muffin. Melted buttermilk biscuit kind of thing. Is amazing. In the Bronx on Arthur Ave, one of my favorites in Little Italy is there's a spot called 089, which is 089, I think is the translation for that. Shout out to them. And then, there's the street carts. I was at an endorsement launch a couple of weeks ago at Diversity Plaza in Queens. And there's a Momo's street cart, and we stopped there and actually had quite a meal. So those are some of the favorites for me. I think that the street vendors I want to give a particular shout out to because they have been struggling quite a bit. I mean, everybody's struggling, but the street vendors often don't have some of the protections that some of the other businesses have gotten.
The best thing for me about going to New York is that because I walk so much, I really feel like I'm at liberty to eat more. So I kind of and I don't do meals. I basically just eat and walk, and I snack, and I will literally plan out and map out according to what food products I need to taste and walk accordingly. But I somehow feel like I justify it by all the walking I'm doing.
That's the best. That's the best. You nosh and you snack along the way, and you can sample everything. Yeah,
I do. And I'll do my research, and I know, like, if I need to go and get the best possible of whatever something is, I'm going to go. Like, that's where I got to go and get it.
All right. So
I've done if I'm going, I'm eating. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. You can't come to New York City and not like do that.
No.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for tuning in, my friend. This is a lovely lady, Dianne Morales, who's running to be the next mayor of New York City. Ken, I believe you do have some friends and family in New York, so definitely want to spread the word. So
tell us how to help.
Okay, so we got some more stuff.
Well, I want to put it up. I was just going to put it up.
No,
so since there's a lot of people.
No, it's Morales for New York City, right?
No, it's Dianne. You want the website?
Yes.
It's www.dianne, DIANNE.NYC.
Oh.
.NYC.
Nice and simple. Nice.
Okay.
We've got a fundraising deadline coming up.
Just want to put that up so everybody knows. In addition to money, you obviously are going to need phone bankers and people to volunteer as well. And everybody, you can do that remotely. And let's be real, New York's mayor is all of our mayor.
Yes. Favorite pizzeria?
It's all about the food for you.
Oh, I gotta get this out there.
So we do pizza every Friday night. This has been a tradition since my kids were little, and we get it from this place called Not Ray's on Fulton Street in Bed-Stuy. What?
Oh, Ray.
That's a direct shot at Manhattan, and I understand Brooklyn rivalry is very real.
It's Not Ray's on Fulton Street.
That's so fun. Everybody, Not Ray. My family is from Brooklyn. From Brooklyn Heights, from forever ago. But I am sadly a second generation Floridian.
Oh,
I know.
Florida.
You know what? When I was a kid, I did have more so. And when I was a kid, things were a little bit different. And I remember there were, flamingos. So, things were definitely.
True. Well, they do have flamingos at Flamingo Gardens.
That doesn't count. When I was little, we would drive across the causeway and actually see the water. Now all you see is concrete.
Right.
Yeah. So it is. It's just different, and it's just way more transient. And not in a great way, in a way where it lacks a hometown loyalty. And that's something that I love when I'm in some place like New York. There is that hometown, regardless of what borough you're in, there's this real sense of loyalty and hometown like connection. Right. And that's something we just don't have here.
Right. Well, there's also character. I think that's the word that comes to mind when I think about like New York versus Florida. It's just, even in New York, even every borough, there's a different sort of character that you can, Manhattan versus Queens versus, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. There is a difference, I think. Every borough is its own kind of thing. And you can tell, you can feel that.
So how do you reach over to the other ones, like how are you, doing in a place like Staten Island? How do you connect in the places that are not your community?
Yeah. Well, actually, one of my, I've got a stronghold in each borough, actually. So I think it's less geographic than it is sort of ideals, right? Yeah. And values, and what things do people ascribe to, and what do they see, or what do they allow themselves to see as the vision for the future of New York City. And this race, my campaign in particular has really, I think, kind of put together a coalition of really diverse New Yorkers that I think is extraordinary. I think, people talk about what's historic about my campaign because I'm the first Afro-Latina to run for office for mayor. And I think, yes. And I recognize that. I appreciate that. I'm humbled by that and take that very seriously. But I think what's really most is historic about this campaign, and it will, I think, be shown in sort of in the history, is the coalition of folks that have come together to support the, the unemployed folks, the students, the Black and brown folks, the working class. It's really kind of an eclectic group that I think is extraordinary and really inspiring.
That's really cool.
How much does it help? I don't know of the other candidates, but how much does it help to be able to speak Spanish and to go into the neighborhoods?
I'm sure huge.
I would imagine, in certain neighborhoods, especially, it means everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's for people to literally hear themselves reflected in someone who is running for this office. You see their, eyes light up. You see their sort of body language change, the disposition change, because it's like, it is a piece of them, I think. There's the language, but then I can also, I was speaking to a group of Latinos in Washington Heights last week, and I could actually talk about lived experiences that were things that they could relate to, and that they had also experienced. So I think you add those experiences to a linguistic and culturally relevant context, and it's a game changer.
Yeah.
I also think there's a very important caveat to this race that isn't getting talked about enough, and that is matching funds.
Yes.
If you are a New York City resident, this is something that should happen everywhere, and it is something.
We don't have that.
Yeah, we need publicly financed elections.
Well,
obviously.
yes, we support publicly funded elections.
But this is probably the closest thing you're going to get to it. So if you can share that, especially with anybody who may be in New York City and is not aware of just how far their dollar actually goes if they were to contribute.
Yes, please do, because I didn't know this.
Yeah, so this is actually the first time the ratios are what they are. But the New York City Public Matching Funds program has a couple of different tiers. The one that I'm participating in actually allows for up to an 8-to-1 match. So what that means is that a New York City resident who contributes to your campaign any amount between $10 and $250 is eligible for an 8-to-1 match. So $10 could yield an additional $80, which means $90 total, and $250 yields an additional $2,000, right? Wow. So that's a $2,250 total. And in particular for a grassroots campaign, for an outsider's campaign, that's a game changer because it really provides the additional resources to level up and scale the infrastructure to be competitive. Right. I mean, not competitive like with compared to the Wall Street, millions and millions, but enough to be, to be respectable and put up a good fight and a good race. And so, I think that's a really important thing. And we're actually trying to right now, the next deadline to qualify for that is March 11th. It's just a week away. And we're hoping that folks will contribute in order to help push us over the edge to help us qualify.
So everyone go on. Throw $10 into this, at least if you can.
Yes, please.
Yes, and help out, because the only way we're going to get representation that isn't corporate is if we put our money behind it. It's the only way it's going to happen. Right. It's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but that's the way it is. So we need people to give what they can, and certainly sign up to help and phone bank even if you don't have any money.
Maybe, obviously, housing, which we covered, and that is a significant part of this equation. But the other significant part of this New York City equation is transportation. The subway system in New York City is horrifically bad. Yeah. I have to say, there's a lot of issues I have with Washington, D.C., but one of them is not the D.C. Metro.
Not the subway,
One of the, if not the best run subway system I've ever been on. But that's not too surprising considering who makes calls in the city.
I mean,
think about what it would mean for the residents of New York City if they had a subway system that mirrored something like DC's. So what are your, or do you have a specific proposal as far as how you would deal with mass transit in New York City?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. I always talk about starting with the things that we can control. And the reality of it is that the subway in particular is a fight, not one that I'm not willing to take on. But in terms of starting with the things we can control, it's the above ground, it's the streets, right? So it's the idea of expanding bus routes, in all communities, but particularly in the outer boroughs, so that they can get access across town and that kind of thing. And I think that's a critical thing. In addition to bike lanes, and that our infrastructure plan is dropping next week. So I invite anybody to sort of circle back and check on the website next week. But I will say also, so the bus routes first. I've also proposed the idea of creating a public works program that would actually employ New Yorkers to help rebuild the infrastructure for the subway system, right? Because one of the serious problems with the subway is the infrastructure. And putting people to work and giving them jobs is just going to reinvest in the local economy. That being said, we know that the sort of big issues with the subway have to involve Albany and dealing with Albany. And so that goes back to sort of what I was talking about before in terms of, being willing to take on Albany and fight for what we deserve. There's been such a divestment in our system for so long. And yet, Albany hasn't recognized the fact that New York City contributes the bulk of, the revenue, the state revenue. And so it's time for us to get back some of what we're putting in. I'm hopeful because we've got a newly elected state supermajority. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to start to recoup some of the investments that we've made some of what we've paid into the state. But I'm also willing to fight for it. And I think that's critical.
That's awesome.
Just out of curiosity, who is your congressional representative?
Hakeem Jeffries.
And with that said, I think we'll have to talk about your plans depending on how this mayoral race goes. Because
he's planning the whole strategy.
I know. Where is this coming from?
Where's it coming from? Because the person who
we need help in Congress.
Because if you think that the person who currently is the biggest Wall Street bootlicker is powerful now, you wait until he is the heir apparent to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah,
that's who they think.
That's what he's.
So
yeah.
You're not the first person to raise that topic. I know.
Look, it's something, it's something to,
and honestly,
just marinate on.
And it wasn't even a got you. I honestly didn't know.
No.
And I have to say, because Jen is very, very close with Lauren Ashcraft and a number of other people.
I
actually
love Lauren.
I was not aware of anybody in particular because I actually think strategy is one of the weakest things on the left. People actually don't know how to wield their power. And they don't actually know how to invest properly.
I don't disagree.
We're always looking at it strategically, not just what we want, because you might want a particular position, you might want a particular congressional seat, but that might not necessarily be the thing that is most likely going to happen. And so he's always like spinning about strategy.
Building that grassroots support network, building relationships where the relationships need to be built. I think a lot of people really need to look very closely at what's going on with Cuomo right now, because what this is showing is that most people deep down don't like the corruption. They don't like the entrenchment. They would fight back if they could, but the system is set up in such an unbelievably constrained way that you never have a chance to do it. And when an opportunity presents itself, hats off, like I said, to Ron Kim, because no one seems to really have, talk about guts. He's literally put his life on the line. He's kind of put it out there that, Cuomo's basically trying to throw me in the East River if he could get away with it. That's pretty serious business, but that's how power politics works, especially when you're talking about big city entrenched politics. And so I'm looking at somebody like Jeffries as you can kill the root before it has a chance to grow into a massive tree. That's only reason I'm looking at that.
The wheels are turning in there. He's like,
So I would love for you to become, if not, like I said, if it's not you, I hope it's Andrew. It's one or the other. But if it isn't, then you always look at what other opportunities may be out there. That's all I'm saying. Not telling you what to do.
Stop it.
But
this is how I ended up in this entire predicament, was because 2 years ago he's like, Congress, and I'm like, I
appreciate the forward thinking and the strategizing. I definitely agree. I definitely agree that the left doesn't do as much strategizing and organizing and mobilizing as we need to do. At least not in the right ways.
And they don't. The truth is, they don't fight dirty enough. They just don't.
I don't even think it's about fighting.
You know what? It's about being a little bit more calculating. It's about being a little bit more on top of what needs to be done. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's ugly.
No, I think the difference is that there's a difference between fighting dirty and willing to get into the mud.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking.
But I think that's really interesting, because I'm gonna test one of the things I've been thinking. So one of the things I think sometimes that the left doesn't do well, or what, is we don't actually coalesce, around one person or one sort of movement, right? We're almost so democratic that we pick each other apart. Whereas one of the things that the right is brilliant at, for better or worse, is they'll get behind that person, no matter who that person is, no matter how awful that person is. They're like they're ride or die for that person. Yep. Whereas we do.
Well, it's funny you say that, but is it really a surprise that the overwhelming majority of the military is on the right? And they basically run their show like they are in the military, tight ship.
Yeah.
And people understand the hierarchy and how it works. And look, I mean, if the Democratic Party cannot get their act together, and again, in this state, there's no question it's going to come down to Nikki Fried and Ann Eskamani for who will be the gubernatorial challenger.
You do realize she has no idea who these people are.
She knows who Ron DeSantis is. And so,
he's a winner.
And so I tell everybody right now, you have one chance to knock him off. If you miss, this is Trump. He is Trump's heir apparent. I mean, he literally has he has mobilized his entire political existence to basically be Trump's little drummer boy. And he is doing one hell of a job, I have to say.
And yet he's still an improvement from what we had before. So imagine that.
Yeah.
That's awful.
And
we had
listen,
Rick Scott before for 8 years.
Bad as Ron DeSantis is, I'd like to think because of his Medicare scandal, the rest of the country will never have to suffer with Rick Scott. That I hope.
We hope. Yeah.
We're concerned.
So we
have some concerns about Rick Scott.
And so we are a little jealous Floridians down here.
We are.
Because New York, everyone taught, it's funny. As a New Yorker, it's always interesting. It's like if you want to become a movie star, you go to LA. If you want to be an actor, you go to New York City. And it's sort of the same thing with the progressive movement in politics. Everyone loves to talk about California and everything that California is doing. New York City is where it's happening. This is where it's happening.
I had so many good slate mates there.
Think about it. You got Lindsay, you got Melanie DeRigo, you got obviously Jamal, you got
there were a lot of people.
Like I said, the dynamic is really changing. And even though, and this is one last thing I'd like to ask you about, we're very friendly with Robert Brunaspino, who's the head of the Long Island activists.
Are you familiar with the Long Island activists?
No, I don't think so.
Check them out because those guys will help you. They'll have a thing for you. Robert Brunaspino, he actually was one of the earliest people to reach out to me and want to support me. Yeah, from Long Island. They started out as a Bernie group, I think, and now they've transitioned and they're just Long Island activists now. But those are definitely your people, and they're loud. And they would, I mean, that is definitely a good resource. I mean, I know it's Long Island.
You don't use the term, activists too loosely, but they are very committed to helping candidates. Melanie DeRigo, as you know, she mounted a very, very impressive challenge.
They'll phone bank.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. Reach out to Robert and they're really great. They were just so enthusiastic. He reached out to me I would imagine they'd be infinitely more interested in the New York mayoral race than my race, but they were on it. And so they are very active. Yeah, check them out for sure.
Good to know. We'll do. Follow up.
We're also good friends with Jordan Cheriton, who does Status Quo. I don't know how much local independent media coverage you've been able to get. Obviously, there's also Nomiki Konst, who's in the New York City area.
Have you spoken with Jordan?
No.
Okay.
No, haven't talked to either one of those.
We're gonna have to make a few calls.
And the truth is, everybody should have their opportunity to state their case. And so, with that in mind, I don't know if it's been determined or not, because the race, obviously there's still a handful of months to go. But is there a scheduled debate or debates for that matter?
Oh, was there ever? I mean, it's like it's forum madness here. There are, we did one this afternoon. There's one tomorrow. And having just one a day is actually a luxury. There have been days that there have been 4, kind of back to back.
Who's coordinating that? Who coordinates that?
So there's a reporter actually made a statement a couple weeks ago that I thought was pretty funny. She said, this has never happened this way. This pace is crazy. She said, I'm convinced that there are groups that are forming for the sole purpose of hosting their own forum. And And there's like all of these niche groups and entities that are, you know, asking for forums. And I don't know if it's something about the Zoom world that makes people think, oh, it's easier. Oh, it's, you know, we can do this. But the pace is really challenging. The candidates and I sort of were in a green room before a forum a couple of weeks ago, and we were joking about like having our children show up in our stead for one of these, you know, just like step in and fill in for us, because it's quite a bit. So it's constant. They are always happening. So, you know,
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad. I mean, we were so ghosted that the entire county pretended that our race wasn't even happening. Debbie basically had us completely ghosted. So when all of the other positions that were being like that there were, you know, races for, whether it was county races or state legislature, they were constantly having debates and forums and panels and whatever. And you would have never even known there was a congressional race.
That hurt a lot.
You didn't even know we existed.
Interesting.
She cut that down so fast. So even, you know, organizations that do those things.
If he's still watching, a good friend of mine who is in, you know, the political establishment actually did try to go to bat for us and say, look, this is not right.
None of the Dem clubs would host us,
you know,
nothing. They just were pretending we didn't exist.
But I think that speaks to a greater issue, which is, you know, the reason why you do get ghosted is because your ideas are dangerous to the establishment. People hear it and they think, oh, you know what, that's a great idea. You know, maybe I should consider voting for somebody else. I've been voting for the same person for so many years. And so injecting that new thought really is, you know, the key in many ways to, you know, bringing that change that is entirely necessary. And so when you think about all these forums that you do, and you're allowed to now inject that idea. Well, you know, now you're
dangerous.
You're bringing a new perspective that isn't being tested, if you will, with the machine. And one of the last things I do want to ask, because obviously New York, everyone knows New York City is, you know, it's as democratic as it gets. But at the same time, we just had on the mayor of Miami-Dade County. She is a Democrat, and we think very highly of her. Her name is Danielle Levine-Cava, and she ran and won a nonpartisan race. How much does it help?
It's a Latina woman.
Yeah. And how much does it help in New York City without having the burden of saying, I mean, yes, certain circles you have to say you're a Democrat, but
nonpartisan.
being able to just basically saying, look, I am a progressive, but this is a nonpartisan race, without having that burden of the two-party duopoly. How much do you feel that actually helps with having it resonate with an average voter?
So in New York, it's interesting. So there are some people that'll just sort of like check to make sure at the beginning, what, you know, are you a Democrat?
Right.
You know, and it's just sort of like, I just got to make sure I check that box before I continue this conversation. But more often than not, it feels like the question is like, are you a progressive? It's, you know, in the continuum, right? There's the assumption that we're probably talking to a Democrat. But is it a traditional Democrat, or are you a progressive Democrat? And it feels like that's become kind of the demarcation in New York, particularly at this moment in time. And there, you know, this race in particular at the beginning, there was not at the beginning, maybe it's still there, but I think it's died out somewhat. There was this question about who's going to claim the progressive lane. And I think
it's all you.
I think that's been established. So there's less conversation. Yeah.
So see, for me, it would be very clear. And yes, I do like Andrew. And yes, he was very good to me. But philosophically and policy wise, I'm voting progressive. Just saying.
Yeah,
so
me too.
For sure.
Well, luckily you don't have to worry about that. But I keep saying and I'm a very direct person. I cannot thank Andrew enough for what he did for Jen.
He was really good to us.
When you have loyalty, especially in politics, it doesn't exist.
He endorsed me. I mean,
that's amazing.
It is. And he really took a stand against a sitting incumbent, you know, corporate congressman. No one else did.
And
Bernie
no
didn't
one
endorse
challenged
us.
it. No, it doesn't.
Right.
But again, it doesn't matter. You can't stop looking at what did and
No,
didn't
but
happen.
that's
Everything is
what
all about going
differentiates
forward.
how special it was that
And-
he actually went out for us.
Yes. And I
Right.
think going forward, that's where, and that's why I look at it from a coalition building
Yes.
perspective. There are going to be differences. There are things
Yeah.
that, look, I've seen things that Andrew has said already that I vehemently disagree with, but you know, he's
Yeah.
you know, the great thing about
But he took
you,
a stand.
yeah, but the great
He
thing
took a
about
stand.
the great thing about you and the great thing about somebody like him is that you do walk to the beat of your own drum. You are not doing some
Absolutely.
lab tested stuff. You are not just trying to go along to get along. You're not trying to get on The View, although it probably wouldn't hurt.
Ugh,
You know,
right.
those biddies.
yeah. Well, I mean, listen, they want Scott Springer on the, you know, they want to put him on the show. I'm just, you know, it's, but to us, as I tell Jen, it's always a means to an end. If you can get on The View, then there's
Right.
no reason not to go on it. If you could
Right.
get on, you know, Wendy Williams, is that her name?
Wendy Williams.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, hey, you
No, it's true.
No, I hear you. I totally hear you. I just thought it was funny. But yes, I hear what you're saying.
And since I'm wearing a suit, and since he's from there, I
So-
have to bring him out. I have
Oh
to bring him
no,
out.
you don't
Yes.
need to sift through
Yes, I
this.
do.
You don't know, but why are
What you totally have to. Could you hold this, please? Could you hold
for
it, please?
God's sake.
Oh my God, he's doing it.
What you totally have to remember is that any publicity is good publicity. So if you could get on TV, make sure you get on TV. Doesn't matter if it's bad, as long as it's good. Believe me when I tell you, we need to get you on The View. We need to get you on Wendy Williams. What other great shows are there in New York City? We totally have to get her on these shows
This
because
is my
she's really,
life.
really great. She's a really lovely lady.
That's pretty damn good.
I'm sure
Holy
you
shit.
would like her. I'm sure you would like
Oh,
her.
I totally would
You're
like
like
her.
a slumlord.
Oh, I'm totally. Well, listen. Look. Have you seen where I live? I totally live right by Central Park. It's a really great place. Really,
Love it.
I'm sure it
and
is.
it's way up there. Did you?
Do you hang out in Bed-Stuy?
No, totally don't hang out in Bed-Stuy. I totally hang out in Queens. I'm from Queens. I'm the king of Queens. Don't you? know
Oh,
that
for
already?
God's
I'm
sake.
totally king of Queens. I just want to say you're really, really incredible. I
This
really
is what I live
appreciate you
with.
running for mayor. And the people of New York City would be much better without that lame De Blasio. Mayor Lamo, Mayor Lame LaBlasio.
Wrap it up,
I
Trumpy.
totally appreciate you coming on. So that's
This is
my
why.
share.
This is why.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
When is your
Impressive.
election? When's your election?
June 22nd is the primary in New York City.
Okay, so everybody get on it. Everybody go to Dianne.NYC. Throw in $10 at least if you can. They get
Yes.
matching funds, which is amazing.
Yes, by March 11th. By March 11th, that's the
all right,
deadline.
so
So everybody
everybody
today.
do it now.
Wow. Okay. So
Well,
let's
that's one. It's one deadline. I mean, but you want to keep.
It's the last deadline to qualify for the matching funds.
Oh,
Wow,
okay. So
okay,
everyone get
that's
on
big.
this.
Well,
It's
you
the
know
last deadline to qualify. Yep.
I've got some friends and family all over New York.
All right,
so
we'll
I
work
guess
on
it's
it.
Do
happening.
it. Let's do it, y'all. Let's do it.
Diane, we can't thank you
Thank
enough.
you so
Obviously,
much. Thank you.
A true grassroots campaign, to say the least. And we
Thank
certainly
you.
look forward to continuing this
Yeah.
conversation. Maybe we'll have you on right before the election.
Yeah, we would. Hey,
Sounds good.
it's
Sounds
you.
good.
anytime. You
Thank
can
you.
come whenever you want.
I'd love that. I'd love that. It's been
So
great.
much.
Thank you both so much.
Bye,
Have a
Stay
wonderful
Diane.
day.
safe. Stay healthy.
You do
You
the
too.
same, Diane.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Well, she is certainly lovely. And
I love
definitely,
her.
again, it's a great thing when
Can you
have,
imagine having someone like that as a mayor of New York? Like
Yeah.
how cool that would be.
Well, again, and that's the thing about her and Andrew is that you actually have two really solid choices in that city. And when is the last time New York really has had substantially good choices?
How are you
for
asking
mayor?
me this? I don't
I'm
know
just
the
putting it
answer.
out-
All
I'm
right,
just- I'm just
I
putting it
don't
out
know
there.
the answer to that.
No, and I do think that she's but she is the kind of person, and I know you don't like when I forward think, but considering all the obstacles that are in her way right now, she is the type of person who
I'd love to see that.
she would obviously be the one who would challenge Hakeem in 2 years if that's
Oh,
what
you need to stop strategizing for people that are not within your purview.
doesn't matter. I have my own good purview. and I know the
Yes,
things
yes,
that I
yes,
see.
yes. Well,
I-
that was really cool.
Yes.
So you guys, if you can, throw
And I think
$10.
she covered a lot of important topics and some fun stuff along the way.
Yeah, I
Had a good
mean,
time.
the reality is when we elect people that are not on corporate payrolls and we elect people that are truly concerned for the well-being of the regular people, it's amazing what you can come up with and what can happen. You don't have to have the exact plan to do things. Just when she answered that question about the schools, there isn't necessarily an exact answer, but what you have is somebody who's willing to discuss it and work on the best interest, on behalf of the best interest of her people. That's what we need.
This is also the other thing that doesn't get talked about enough. Everyone is so concerned about, does it really make a difference if we elect representatives who are not taking corporate special interest money? Yes, it does matter. Can you get a lot done on Capitol Hill right now? No, you can't. But that doesn't matter because that's not the entire equation. Now, do I think that some of the representatives on Capitol Hill should be fighting harder right now? Yes, of course. Everyone knows they should be, but they're not. So what does that mean? It means, how do you make changes at the local level? If you can become an elected mayor in New York City without the corporate special interest money literally coming out your ears,
amazing.
That does make a difference.
Yeah.
And you would be able to prioritize. Everyone thinks that, oh, well, it's a Democrat, so it must be better. No, it's not better, because the truth is, Mayor de Blasio, compared to, Bloomberg and, dare I say, Giuliani, he's a failure. He's a colossal failure.
Okay.
And
are you suggesting that Bloomberg was successful
as a mayor? No, not particularly.
Well, I'm not, I think that he lacks the human element.
Yes, he does lack the human element, but then again, you don't need a billionaire running New York City.
No.
And you don't need a billionaire's money backed candidate.
No, we could definitely have nice Afro-Latina.
Well, she looks like New York City, much like Shahid looks like San Francisco.
I think that the key is what she was talking about, is that her life experience is something that mirrors a typical person.
Right.
A typical person, a single working mom, 2 kids. I mean, that is somebody who doesn't come from money, someone who doesn't come with advantages, but still figured out a way to do it. That is extremely qualifying.
It's hard to believe, but the last time New York City had a mayor like that was Fiora LaGuardia. I mean, you're talking about the Depression, New Deal era. That was really the last time.
Has New York had a female mayor?
I don't think so. So,
it is high time.
Yeah, it would be high time.
I honestly, and it isn't about the gender card. It's about, I seriously believe that women just get stuff done. I'm sorry, they just do. We multitask better. We just get stuff done. We just handle business. And I just think that, you know what? Let's try that. Let's see how that goes.
And it's not even that you need, there needs to be a balance. There's no balance right now. They don't, I don't even know what the numbers would be. I mean, in our country, it's pathetic how few women are in positions of power and how necessary it is to have that variety, because you need a perspective that basically reflects everybody, and having somebody like Diane, and listen, she's got great experience. She may not be, a city council member, but that doesn't, everyone thinks that you have to be an elected official.
No.
Being an elected official is not rocket science. I know a lot of people like to think it is.
It really isn't.
There are certain positions that do require you to really, have amazing chops, like being a state attorney. That requires you to have great experience and know your chops.
And yet we've got
pretty solid.
Well, we're oh, you're talking about the county. Okay, sorry. Yes, we do. We have a decent.
I'm not talking about our.
Well, I'm thinking Katie. Yeah, that's what you were talking about, and I'm
no, we like our state attorney Harold Pryor.
Yes, we do like our new Broward County state attorney.
Speaking of state attorney, we should bring on. Teresa did say she wanted to come on at some point, so yeah,
no shortage. And we also are going to have on our friend Elijah Manley, who has just announced that he is running for State House seat 94, which obviously we endorse Elijah wholeheartedly.
And we are going to have obviously lots of interesting guests coming up, but we can't reveal too much.
We can't, but we do need to touch on our March 20th.
Yes.
We are hosting a Pardon Assange live stream from 2 to 6 Eastern time on March 20th. We have several different time slots that we're booking up. So it's going to be like a round robin rotation of different people coming through.
You're not going to want to miss this.
You're not. We've had some really great people confirming. Katie Halper is co-hosting that with me. It's going to be really cool. And to be honest, I don't really know all who's going to end up at the, when all said and done, being all the guests, because we've put out a lot of invitations. We have reached out to people like Noam Chomsky and Cornel West. We'll see what happens with that. But we've already had some really good confirmations. And so I'm really excited about that. And it's extremely critical that we try to get as many people on and watching on the 20th as possible. Julian Assange is a huge issue for me. It should be a huge issue for everybody. And if you're not supporting Julian Assange, you need to be. So that's what we're trying to do, and bring as much attention to it as possible, because mainstream media won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
As the great Noam Chomsky says, if you believe in the First Amendment, it means you protect the speech that you don't like, not the speech that you do like. And that's the truth, because a lot of people don't like Julian Assange for a variety of different reasons. And you know what? Who cares? Well,
and you're not even talking about things like deplatforming certain content. When you're talking about him, that's a whole other issue of censorship, which is another problem. Mm-hmm. But what we're talking about with Julian Assange, that's a huge problem, is this would be the first time in our country's history where someone is being prosecuted under the Espionage Act for reporting the truth. So if you want to think about how scary that is, because that to me is one hop, skip, and jump away from fascism. When you can prosecute somebody for reporting the truth, that's it. We're done.
If you have a problem with what happened to Khashoggi, then you should have the same feeling when it comes to Julian Assange.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. So if you haven't been following the Julian Assange issue because you watch mainstream media and so they don't cover it because they're not allowed to cover it, educate yourself, and certainly check out our March 20th live stream. It's a very important issue. And we're going to be encouraging everybody to be flooding the Department of Justice with phone calls and emails demanding that they drop the charges against Julian Assange.
Remember, guys, we can only grow at an organic pace. So we need you to like the channel on YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed, that you do watch as many videos, and let the ads run if you can. And if you would like to become a Patreon, that would definitely help us a great deal. We do not like to push for funds, but I can tell you that as Gen Core grows, we want to be able to have money to do as many local events as possible. And we also want to be able to help out progressive non-corporate candidates who are running for
And let's be clear, we're nonpartisan with that.
Yes.
We would support any candidate that is a non-corporate candidate that is wanting to serve their community. That's it. That's what we care about. And so it isn't about any particular policy. It's about whether or not you are on the payroll.
Yeah. And as you saw tonight, there's no question that Ms. Morales is definitely, a very special individual. And our producer just pointed out, we did not mention our bootlicker of the week. I got to bring that person up, because what would be
well, this is the contrast with our change maker, because Diane was our change maker. So let's bring,
Yes. There it is. So we've got a wonderful bootlicker of the week, and we really like to go after people that just can't help themselves. They really, make it kind of, they really don't make it too difficult for us to go after them.
So
because they just kind of do it. So our bootlicker of the week is none other than our lovely new press secretary, Jen Piscai. And
is it Psaki?
Or
I don't think it's Piscai.
It's Piscai, Psaki.
I think the P is probably silent, which is just another thing.
All right, so Psaki to me, baby. So there you go. So the reason why Jen is our bootlicker of the week is pretty simple. You have somebody who, in the White House press corps, has to do everything in her capacity to try to make Joe Biden look good. Especially
That's a rough job.
When Joe,
it's a rough job.
And especially when Joe doesn't want to give a press conference. He hasn't given one since he's become president. That's kind of scary, but it is what it is. The fact that she, for the entire past week, has been literally trying to push Neera Tanden over the finish line and was completely sidestepping the $15 minimum wage. I don't know. That's pretty bad and pretty much in line with just, whatever the corporate establishment wants. And then if that's not enough, listen, we have our issues with Elizabeth Warren, but she is very much an advocate for taxing the rich. And Lord knows now we need it. And the fact that somebody in the press conference today asked Jen about the 0.2% tax increase, or is it 2? I think it's 2%.
Told you I haven't been following.
The 2% tax increase on the uber rich. And that is a question that she sidestepped.
I will say this. That's a very, that's not an easy job to have. You automatically kind of are a bootlicker to even have that job. Your whole job, the entire existence of you in that position is to lick boots.
Well, when you think about Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Caitlin McEnany, and who was the
last time I remember there being
and Mooch.
The last time I remember there being a White House press secretary that I actually really liked was Dee Dee Myers. So that was a long time ago.
Is that Clinton?
Yeah, but I think it was like first term Clinton.
Yeah.
And so that was a long time. I actually met her. So, I've also met Marlon Fitzwater, another decent press secretary as well. Actually, that was Bush Senior, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm a little old.
But just the idea that again, I like listening to her is it's just kind of it's no different than Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's basically the same thing. And the people want to play on their team. They want people who are true blue, no matter who, are going to say, well, Jen's doing a wonderful job. She's protecting the president. And no, that's not what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be transparent. You're supposed to be able to ask questions. And when you're not, that is a form of fascism. It's a form of dictatorship.
Well, we're there. We've crossed over.
Freedom of the press is dying. And this all brings it back to why pardoning Julian Assange
is massive.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Because at some point, people are going to go into the press corps and they're not going to be able to ask questions. In fact, they're going to get in trouble if they question power. It's all an illusion. And we got to end that facade because people do have a right to ask questions. The press of yesteryear were feared by people in power. Now they have dinner with them. Did you hear about David Brooks?
No, I don't even know who that is.
David Brooks of the New York Times. David Brooks?
No idea.
Okay.
I don't read swill.
So David Brooks, for those of you who do know, is one of the most connected establishment writers.
See, how would I know
politics.
that? I don't read swill.
I don't read it either.
Well,
but there was a major conflict of interest that he just got caught up in. He apparently was getting paid $250,000 a year by Facebook to write certain articles on their behalf, and they somehow just caught this guy. And yet I'm sure he's not going to lose his job with the New York Times. No, why would he? Because, power protects power. But the idea that he had a side hustle that was paying him $250,000 a year, that's amazing. It really is, but it really isn't. So
journalism is a dying thing.
It is. Well, we are doing a form of journalism.
Okay, that's scary because, we're doing a form of disseminating information. Yes, we're not doing primary reporting. So I will accept that we do a certain amount of information gathering, but
yes.
we're not primary sources, and nor do we claim to be primary sources.
And on that note, our producer John just said, had Bernie won, Nina Turner would have liked to have been Bernie's press secretary. Now that would have been a trip.
And to me, that would have been a total waste of her position.
I think she would have been much better as
I think she's going to be.
I think
she's going to be much better as Ohio Congresswoman.
I think she is too. And on that note,
yes,
we appreciate you guys as always. Remember, subscribe.
Even you mean people that are over there talking crap.
Hey, listen, you guys. Hey, you're boosting the algorithm for the
whatever,
channel.
Man.
So it's helping us out.
Somebody says, why don't we have conservatives run an echo chamber? You know what? First of all, That's not true about me. I bring on people that share different types of information. And a lot of times it's not candidates. A lot of times it's just people that have information. I'll have somebody on who wants to talk about, farming. I mean, so I don't do that. But what we do is we promote candidates that are non-corporate candidates. Now, if you find me a conservative candidate that is not a corporate candidate, I'd be very happy to give them a platform. I will not give a platform to anybody who takes corporate money. And so if you want to find me some conservative candidates that are not on a corporate payroll, I'd be very happy to platform them.
Yes.
So the reason we don't have conservatives on is, well, quite honestly, I don't know of any that are non-corporate that are running, that have sought us out, that have wanted to come on. So I'm not avoiding them. I have no problem with them. I have Republican friends. It's just not something that.
And let's leave you guys with this thought. A lot of people ended up voting for Joe because they thought that you simply had to get Trump out of the White House. Well, you know what? That's a lot of progressive voters, independent voters, people who have no interest in corporate funded candidates. Don't you think that the same is probably true for a lot of people who voted for Trump, that they have the exact same thought process? I hate the corruption.
Yep.
I hate the same old BS. I don't want to be electing representatives who do not answer to us. Case in point, what's going on right now. That is why we need to find ways to come together. You can't continue to look at the other side as the enemy. If you want to look at somebody like Ron DeSantis, or somebody especially like Rick Scott, or even Marco Rubio, or yes, even Debbie Wasserman Schultz as the enemy, yes, because that is the enemy.
They're impeding progress.
The people who are voting for these people are not an enemy. Now, are there people who are doing it because they're looking out for their own self-interest? Yes, you want to consider them? Fine. But the overwhelming majority of people are good people, and they just want to live a better life. And stop trying to find reasons not to get along with them.
And a big part of the problem is that we've lost our fourth estate and the people are not having access to accurate information. Most people don't know things. They think they do. They think they get up and they're informed and they put on CNN and they watch the news. And so they're really informed.
The best example of that, case in point, best example. They were literally going to turn Andrew Cuomo into the next presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. And it was showing. It was showing. He was ahead in polls for who they would prefer to be the next presidential candidate. Now, realistically,
I believe that if that even came about to happen, his closet stuff would come out so fierce that he wouldn't make it anywhere near it.
But that's not the point. The point is you have corporate media that is still in control of the narrative that doesn't pay a price. And so we have to continue to work to build our network, and we are getting suppressed, and there is censorship, which again brings it back to the final point again. Julian Assange needs to be pardoned. Otherwise, the precedent will be set that anyone in media can be taken down if they get in the way, and that is fascism. So freedom of the press must be protected, even for those you don't like. With that said, we appreciate you guys. You see the banner at the bottom. Check out the channel. Spread the word.
We actually have the same amount of people watching and same amount of likes. Okay, at the same moment for a second there, which is kind of cool.
Well, with that said,
who's coming on Monday? Do we know who we have on Monday, John?
I don't think so, but that's okay because
we don't always know.
Potluck surprise.
It's always
something here, right?
Good. Yeah, we'll have someone good. We'll do something local. Right? We'll do local. Maybe get Elijah.
Well, we are having local. Yes. As a matter of fact, we will let you know who's coming on Monday. Monday,
who is
as we are continuing our labor series, we are going to have the head of the Broward County firefighters and paramedics, Jason Smith.
Okay, that's right. So Monday will officially be our first labor episode in our labor series. Yes, Jason Smith will be coming on.
And we may even have another local candidate.
We could even have
Elijah come on.
We could have a local candidate. We could have a local mayor. You never know. Somebody Florida.
Guys, behave yourselves in the chat, but keep chatting because it's always good for the algorithm. We really appreciate you. Have a great evening.
You want me to talk to John about timeouts?
Oh, please.
First of all, he's not my posse. He's my producer. So yes, he is definitely on our team.
Yes.
And second of all, if he's finding something worthwhile of putting you in timeout, you probably did something that wasn't so nice. So,
oh Lord.
and here's the beauty of it is that as much as we like discussion, we don't have to tolerate too much nonsense. We really don't. There's no reason for it. There's just not. So if you're not going to be
get along.
yeah, it's like if you're
No
going to
reason
be
not
here
to.
just to be mean and be a troll, like
Like I said, I don't mind.
he likes it. It helps the algorithm.
It helps the algorithm. That's good enough.
But it's like, you know,
More
we
comment,
don't
betterness
need
for us.
we don't need to tolerate nastiness or crap. We just don't. And
No.
yeah, I am way too old for that. So John is our producer, and if he finds your commentary unfit, too bad, so sad.
Well, on that note, I'm glad people do enjoy Jen's humor. It's not as toilet humor
I
as
wish
mine could
my
be.
teenage boy appreciated it. I live in a frat house, okay? I live in a frat house. I have a husband, I have 2 sons, and I have him here all the time. I live in a frat house. So you have to laugh about it. That's why.
We appreciate you guys,
Peace
as
out.
always.